The morning mist clung to the abandoned railway tracks like a forgotten memory. Sarah had taken this shortcut through the old industrial district 100 times before, her worn sneakers crunching against the gravel as she hurried to her shift at the diner. But today something made her stop. In the distance, through the fog, she saw a massive shape that didn't belong there. Her heart began to race as she moved closer, and then she saw him, a magnificent chestnut horse, his coat matted and dull, chained to the railway tracks with heavy industrial chains. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, Sarah saw something that would haunt her forever if she walked away. Pure, desperate hope. She ran toward him, her breath coming in sharp gasps, and that's when she noticed the piece of paper tucked into his bridle. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. The words were scrawled in messy handwriting. His name is Apollo. I can't afford to feed him anymore. I can't watch him starve. Forgive me. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the note. Then at Apollo, then down the tracks where the morning freight train would come roaring through in less than an hour. Someone had chained this beautiful creature here, not out of cruelty, but out of a twisted mercy. They couldn't bear to watch him suffer, so they'd chosen what they thought was a quicker end. But Sarah wasn't going to let that happen. She pulled at the chains, but they were locked tight with a padlock she had no way to break. Her phone had no signal out here in this dead zone between the warehouses. She looked into Apollo's eyes again, and he nickered softly, as if asking her not to give up on him. Think about it, have you ever faced a moment where giving up seemed easier than fighting? Where walking away would have been simpler than staying? Sarah had faced that moment 3 years ago when her daughter Emma was diagnosed with leukemia. Everyone had statistics and sympathetic looks, but Sarah had refused to accept defeat. She'd worked 3 jobs, fought with insurance companies, sat by Emma's bedside through endless nights. And Emma had survived. Sarah had learned that miracles don't just happen. Sometimes you have to chain yourself to hope and refuse to let go. She looked at Apollo and made a decision. She would not abandon him the way life had tried to abandon her daughter. She ran back down the tracks toward the main road, her lungs burning, her legs pumping with everything she had. She flagged down the first vehicle she saw. A pickup truck driven by an elderly man named Frank. Through gasping breaths, she explained the situation. Frank didn't hesitate. He grabbed bolt cutters from his truck bed and a length of rope, and together they raced back to Apollo. The horse was becoming agitated now, perhaps sensing the vibration of the approaching train through the rails. Sarah talked to him in a soothing voice, the same voice she'd used when Emma was scared in the hospital while Frank worked on the chains. The bolt cutters strained against the metal, once, twice. The sound of a train whistle pierced the morning air. Still distant, but getting closer. Frank's weathered hands worked faster. Sarah's entire body was shaking. Apollo's eyes were wide with fear. The chain snapped. Sarah grabbed the rope and looped it around Apollo's neck, and together, she and Frank pulled. The horse was weak from hunger and fear, his legs trembling, but he moved. They stumbled off the tracks and into the weeds just as the freight train thundered past, its horn blaring. The conductor, unaware of the life-and-death drama that had just unfolded mere seconds before his arrival. Sarah collapsed to her knees, her arms around Apollo's neck, sobbing into his matted mane. Frank stood there, his own eyes wet, his hand on Sarah's shoulder. Over the next few months, Sarah did something that everyone told her was impossible. She kept Apollo. She reached out on social media, and the story of the horse chained to the tracks spread like wildfire. Donations poured in from strangers moved by the story. A local stable offered free boarding. A veterinarian volunteered her services. Apollo slowly transformed from a broken, starving creature into the magnificent animal he was meant to be. His coat grew glossy, his eyes bright with life again. But the real transformation was in Sarah. She'd spent 3 years since Emma's recovery feeling like she was just going through the motions, working to pay off medical bills, existing rather than living. Apollo gave her purpose again. He reminded her that kindness isn't just about grand gestures. It's about refusing to walk past suffering when you have the power to stop. 8 months after that foggy morning, Sarah stood in the stable, brushing Apollo's coat until it gleamed like copper in the sunlight. Emma was with her, stronger now, her hair grown back in soft curls. The girl pressed her face against Apollo's neck, and the horse nuzzled her gently, as if he understood that they were both survivors, both given a second chance. Sarah thought about the person who had left that note, who had been so overwhelmed by circumstances that death had seemed like the only option. She hoped they somehow knew that Apollo was alive and loved, that their moment of desperation had been met with an answer they couldn't have imagined. Sometimes the darkness feels so heavy that we can't see any other way through. But Sarah had learned, twice now, that there are always people willing to run toward hope instead of away from it, people who will fight for life even when it seems easier to surrender. And in those moments, when one person's compassion meets another's desperation, something miraculous happens. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because we remember we're not meant to face the hard moments alone. If this story touched your heart, remember that there are countless Apollos in this world, both human and animal, chained to their own railway tracks, waiting for someone to stop and care. Be that someone today.